Welcome to Tibalt's Apprentice. Today's episode is Ob Nixilis of the Black Oath. It's going to be kind of a stream of consciousness commander deck. It occurs to me that I have never actually built a deck from scratch. I've put together from deck lists. I've taken pre-cons and swapped out more than half the cards in them, probably. But I've done that on a regular basis without actually building one from scratch. I'm going to use a template roughly based on the guys from the command zone. I can hear you asking now, why Ob Nixilis? Well, because jank you, that's why. Nothing personal. Just if you tell me that a card is janky and not worth anything or it can't be done, I take that as a personal challenge then to do something with it. I find the fact that he is only used in 120, what's my notes say, 124 decks, I think, on EDH Rec. I take that as a personal affront to the fact that that mono block commander should be out there and should be forefront. Let's be honest. Actually, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be making a shell, and any mono black commander could probably go into this. It is, however, kind of an exercise also in building a deck, building a template, and going from there. And you know what? Nobody really cares about any of this. Let's just get into the cards. According to the command zone, ideally, you would have 10 ramp cards in there. They're all pretty basic, and there's probably not, it's not worth talking about any of them except for these two. Of the 10 standard ones I have, the Nyx Lotus, the Helm of Awakening, Darksteel Ingot and Manalith are probably cards that shouldn't be in there, but a portion of these cards, because this is going to be a shell, I'm not going to feel bad about taking it apart. For the pre-cons that I build and so on, I tend to leave them together. Since this is an experiment, some of the cards are going to be swapped out and so on. So the Nyx Lotus, however, is a card that I definitely think gets overlooked when it comes to doing monocolored commanders. Even if you have a dual color commander, I think it's going to be worth it to have that in there if your cards weigh heavily in one direction or the other and you're not sure that you're going to have the mana that you need, or you want to round out your mana base a little bit better. I think it's worth it to have that. Maybe Chromatic Lantern would be a better choice, but this is the one that I've gone with here. Of the other ones, Bubbling Muck is the one that maybe new players haven't seen. It's a sorcery, so it can be used on your turn, and you've got a one-shot chance at using it, but the fact that you can recur certain cards because of other cards that I've chosen in here makes it worthwhile. Now, a quick note about the artwork for the show where it says $400 or less. This comes from the fact that I've got $400 credit at an online game store. And I got that by just dumping probably maybe a third of my common cards. Everybody has their ship and sell things these days. So I boxed up, a few thousand cards and got $400 credit. So that's where this number comes from. Is it going to be a $400 deck by the time I'm done? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. Or probably. Again, the cards that I'm buying are going to be used in other decks, so I'm going to spend maybe a little bit more than I would normally buying cards. Anyhow, let's get back to the deck tech. For card draw, they suggest, again, the command zone, suggest that you have about 10 cards for card draw. Of the ones that I have here, a couple of the more unique ones would be Erebos the Bleak-Hearted and Erebos God of Death. I like the idea of having card draw on an enchantment, as we all know, Enchantments, tough to remove in a game, often overlooked. And the fact that the enchantment can be indestructible makes it even better. Another enchantment card on the board that has multiple effects, depending not only on what I might be playing in this deck, but what other players at the table might be wanting to do. Anybody that forces discard strategies is going to be supplying you with either zombies or mana to your mana pool. So this also kind of doubles up in the ramp category. So that's why I played a little loose and fast with the ramp cards also. Speaking of making people discard, this doesn't necessarily go into the ramp category, but I threw it in here as one of these slots anyhow. And that's Words of Waste. The idea that for a colorless mana, the next time I would draw a card this turn, each opponent discards a card from his or her hand instead. Again, leads to some strategies. Again, this is crafted somewhat to the pod that I play in, my core 4. Knowing the strategies that I see most often, I think that's going to have a nice little wrinkle that folks are going to have to work around. Now, the next slots to fill up are targeted and board wipes. Targeted removal and board wipes. It's suggested 10 to 12 targeted removal and 3 to 4 board wipes. This is where I got lazy when I was putting my deck together, and instead of filling them into strict categories, I kind of just jammed about 16 or 17 removal cards in there without considering specifically, is this targeted or is this mass removal? Some of the new ones like Blood in the Snow are going to be in there. Extinguish All Hope. Fun ones like Aether Snap, I think, is a card that gets overlooked or could certainly be played more often. Being that I am playing in a monocolored deck, I think that things like Corruption are going to be a good addition to this. Also, Bitter Ordeal. Being able to search a person's library for a card, I think, is very advantageous, I guess. That seems like an understatement. Being able to look at somebody's hand, rather somebody else's deck in a game of Commander, while it will slow things down, and maybe that's why it's not as played as often as it should be. Well, as often as I think it should be. It just seems like a good idea to me, that ability. And it also has Gravestorm, which is a keyword that we don't come across too often. When you play the spell, copy it for each permanent put into a graveyard this turn. Since I do have board wipes, that 3 mana, that 1 black and 2 colorless, seems like a easy price to pay to ruin somebody else's deck. Some cards that I haven't played enough of, Bake into a Pie and Eat into Extinction. Well, COVID happened, so I haven't got nearly the amount of time that I would have liked to have played these cards and this much Commander. I haven't got a chance to play enough Commander to really make use of these, so I'm looking forward to throwing these in here. Also, I have in here as a removal, both targeted and mass removal, Darkness. It's not removal per se, but you've removed an attack step from somebody else. And again, a lot of people, newer players, may not even be aware that this card exists. It's one of those cards that kind of breaks the color pie. For 1 black mana, for 1 single swamp, you can prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. It is an instant, so it doesn't even have to be on your turn. Maybe you want to play politics and you want to save somebody else. This is a nice option. So if you can get your hands on one, Darkness is always a nice surprise. Now let's see. Did we mention Toxic Deluge and Aether Snap? The idea that you can remove all the counters from something helps take care of those nasty planeswalkers. And also for Indestructible, being cognizant of the fact that I am playing Indestructible, makes me think also that when my opponents play it, how frustrating it is. And Toxic Deluge being able to assign -X will help get rid of those cards that sometimes there's just no other way to get off the board. Now, at about this point, just randomly going through the cards, it popped into my mind that Harvester of Souls would be another fun card to put in here. Death Touch, and whenever another non-token creature dies, you may draw a card. Again, considering the amount of removal that I'm running, both mass and targeted, I like the fact that I can draw more cards off of this. Again, since this was sort of stream of consciousness, it occurs to me that a Voldukan Orrery might be a good thing to have in my back pocket as far as this deck goes. Maybe doesn't serve the overall theme, but since I envision myself very quickly becoming arch enemy once I start to enact my plans, I want to be able to reserve the right to play at instant speed. That also might push us up towards that $400 credit limit. At any rate, moving on to the rest of the deck. This is the 19 cards or so that are going to be used to finish out the deck. I've called this Ob Nixilis, so let's put every version of Ob Nixilis in there. So that fills out another 4. Other cards that feel useful to me are cards such as Disturbed Burial, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, the Elder Spell, and of course we go for the other tried and true things for Ob Nixilis deck that I've mentioned in previous pre-con upgrades, and that's Yawgmoth Thran Physician along with Nest of Scarabs. Another fun trick, of course, is Gravebane Zombies. Tainted Remedy, Mindcrank, No Mercy, all fun cards to add in here. Consuming Spirit, Exquisite Bond, and Sanguine Bond, of course, because, it's a black deck, so why not annoy everybody else at the table with an instant win condition. Exsanguinate, Sanguine Indulgence, and of course my personal favorite, Elixir of Immortality, to be able to replay those cards. For land, I simply went with about 8 cards to round out the mana base, which is going to be primarily swamps. A few snow-covered swamps to throw in there for the new cards for Kaldheim. But Cabal Coffers, Cabal Stronghold, Castle Locthwain, Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, Witch's Cottage, Temple of the False God, Arch of Araska. And it seemed like I had one more in here. Where was that? Oh yes, Bonder's Enclave. So what do you think? What cards did I miss? What cards are an obvious mistake that I'm putting in here? I'm actually looking forward to this deck, not only because I've built it from, arguably, the ground up, though I have put in some tried and true combos. Still, it's the first time that I'm putting something together completely originally. I guess you can call this original? I don't know. What do you think? Leave in the comments below. Before I go on much further, I want to say, and this isn't a criticism, but watching the Command Zone, I think I've seen enough games now to see the pattern of the guys not being surprised or fazed by what's on the board. It seems that they are always waiting for an answer to whatever problem is there. So using this template, I'm interested to see if I settle into that same, what's the word I'm looking for? That same contentment of knowing there's an answer in there and I just have to reach it. I don't know. Is that how you play your games? When you sit down, are you amazed by every play that goes on, or are you confidently waiting for your answer that you know is in your deck? Using this template, I'm interested to see how that plays out. Maybe it won't. Maybe this is a terrible idea and I've wasted hundreds of dollars. We'll see. That brings us to our next point. Let's go ahead and see about ordering some of these cards. Well, the order has been placed, and some of the cards are on the way. How much, you might ask? Well, about $280 worth of them. To be fair, I did get an extra copy of my Thran Physician and maybe a couple of extra Disturbed Burials. So that $280 price tag is not what is going to finally be spent on this deck. But it has the majority of the cards that they did have. I'm missing a few. Let me look quickly and see. Some of those cards, like, yes, here's the cards that are missing. No Soul Ring, no Jet Medallion, no Nyx Lotus, no... Wow, really? Am I missing that many cards? You know what? Maybe there needs to be a part 2 to this. Let's see what I actually get this weekend when these cards arrive. And this will be the list as it stands right now. We'll compare that to what I actually wind up with at the end of the week. Oh, thanks for watching.